Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I would like to do a review of Mechanica by Betsy Cornwell. I'm assuming I was sent this from the publisher. I do have an unboxing video of this on my channel if you're interested in that. But the name of the publishing company is Houghton, Mifflin and Harcourt, and I believe they sent it to me for review. There was no paper in there, so I couldn't probably thank them. I want to go ahead and do a review of it because I read it in just a couple days, and I want to make sure this is up in time for the release on August 4th. So if you don't know what this book is about, it is a Cinderella retelling. I know what you're thinking. It sounds a lot like Cinder, Gwen. Oh no, it's not Cinder at all. Cinder is more cyborg futuristic and this is more steampunk, and it follows more closely to the actual Cinderella story that you are used to. In this story you follow Nicolette, who is the main protagonist, as she loses her mother and her father and now is stuck with her evil stepmother and stepsisters. And she is left a note on her 16th birthday by her mother that says, go find this key, go to this workshop, and kind of it goes from there. The story starts off really intriguing by the letter left from her mother and to go find this workshop, and you're just so intrigued right from the beginning. There are so many things about this book that I loved, but then there are some things that I didn't love as much. So that is why I ended up rating this book a 3.5 to 4 stars. So the things that I loved, I absolutely loved, and I wrote like a little list here. I loved the inventions. The steampunk elements really shone through, and the inventions were so magical, and it just made me wish that they were all real. Like, I want all of the inventions that it talked about in this book. I loved the characters and the character development, and also the side characters and the development of those characters. They also made leaps and bounds as far as development is concerned. Although a little fast, there was development. The world building was magical. It's set in a time where humans and fairies live amongst each other, like two different races almost, and there is magic that comes from the fairies or the fae. And it's kind of hard to explain because it wasn't explained super well in this book, but time has progressed, and now magic and like fae things are no longer allowed. They're kind of illegal. So I really enjoyed that world building and the mix of the fairies and the magic and the fae, and it was awesome. The letters, it started with a letter from her mother, and it was written in a different font, kind of like a letter would be, but she also received a few more letters throughout, but from two different people, and they were also written in a different font, and I appreciated that because it made it seem really realistic. Like they really were letters from different people. The opening again was very intriguing right from the beginning, and some of the phrases and word choices were amazing. Some of my favorites I marked. The first one being, so I nodded and looked down, and I retreated to the kitchen. When your heart is broken, it's easier to follow rules. And that just proves that in the very beginning, Nicolette really felt defeated and broken, so it was easier for her to just be a follower and do what she was told. And then as the story progresses, you see if that changes or not. And I just really felt that that was true, and it was just beautifully spoken and simply written, and it meant so much. The second one that I marked, those rooms were the site of so much imagined friendship. I was sure the reality would only be sweeter, and I loved that line. I think we all have a little bit of imaginary friendships, especially here on BookTube, or at least I do. I feel like, oh, I could totally be best friends with them, and oh yeah, my friend from, you know, wherever that I don't even know if they know I exist. So I totally understood what she meant by imagined friendships, and I just loved it. It was so simple, yet so poetic. And the third one that I marked that I also really loved was, I put my mother's journals down and decided to focus on building, not reading for a while. I pretended my heart didn't ache. And of course, I was able to relate to this. It's when you put on that happy front, you're smiling and you're pretending like you're happy, but really inside you're crumbling and your world is ending. So I really understood those, and they were so simple but so powerful. And yes, but one thing I did not like, and I am sure much of you will agree, This sentence, this phrase needs to kick the bucket because I'm so sick of reading it. I want to throw the book across the room when I read it. And I ended up talking to my fiance about this for like 30 minutes, like how authors could change this up and make it so much better. And here it is. Immediately, seamlessly, it opened. I let out a breath I hadn't known I had been holding. Never heard that one before. Those were some of the quotes, phrases that I marked in this book because they really spoke to me, either good or bad, and I just wanted to share those with you. But there are other, of course, lines, phrases in here that spoke to me as well, and overall I really enjoyed the writing style. Other things that I really enjoyed was the passing of time. It starts when she receives the letter from her mother, and then it kind of goes back to how it was when the whole family was together, the mother, the father, and Nicolette. Her mother passes. There's a brief stint of time where it's just her father and he remarries, and then of course the father dies and Nicolette is stuck with the stepmother and steps. And I loved the passing of time, and even just when her parents had passed, it's just, you really feel like a passage of time. You feel like the seasons are changing and so forth. I really loved the retelling aspects. It really held close to the classic Cinderella fairy tale that you're used to. A lot of the same elements were there, but told in a very different way, and I really enjoyed that. The ending is very far from the original, but it's enjoyable nonetheless. I enjoyed the steampunk elements. They were probably some of my favorite, and I loved Jules. I loved him. I loved him. He was just a character all of his own, and I needed him more. And then the first 2/3 of the book. So basically the first 2/3 of the book were amazing. I loved the, the fairy, fae, human interaction. I loved the friendships that were forged. I liked Nicolette understanding like what she wanted to do with her life. I understood and appreciated all of that. But now let's get into the things that I didn't like. I knew there was going to be a problem when I was more than halfway through the book, but yet we weren't getting there. It wasn't going up. It was good. It was just good, but we were just going along and nothing was changing, and I was worried, and I was talking to my fiance about this. I was like, I feel like we're building up for something, and I feel like we're building up for something, and we just never got there. It never climaxed. I believe the climax was that she goes to the ball and the clock strikes 12 and she has to rush home because everything's turning back to the way it was before the fairy godmother, and she loses her slipper and the prince picks it up and he's like, I'm gonna find who this belongs to. That happened in a roundabout way, but it didn't really seem like that much of a climax. And I guess the plot twist was the climax, but it just felt like a plot twist. It didn't really feel like the climax of the story. And yeah, I was disappointed with that. So the first 2/3 of the book, 200 so pages, was excellent. The last 100 or so pages, not so good. Some things in the story were left open. There is a drawer or something, some container of some sort that has these ashes in it. And throughout the story, they're kind of in the story, like woven in or out the story, and you're like, what's up with these ashes? And you never really find out what's up with the ashes. And what's up with the ashes? I need to know. What's up with the ashes? I mean, I can make assumptions all day, but I wanted to know what was up with the ashes. And then there are 2 side characters later on that become friends with our main protagonist, and one of them's mom is sick and you never find out what happens to her. I mean, if you do find out what happens to her, I don't remember reading about it. Of course, I did finish this book at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I don't think you find out what happens to her mom, and it's kind of important to the story, I think. So, what's up with that? The thing that really bothered me, without too many spoilers, was what happened with Nicolette's interaction with the prince. What he said to her the grand, statement where he called her, Nicolette, come to me. He's led to him, and she comes, and it's this big thing, and you're like, oh, the build's up I've been waiting for. And then he says something. And I know that Nicolette had to have been like, is he serious? Because, yeah. So that whole part was just like, I can't believe he went there. And yeah, so I didn't really like that. And that kind of ruined it for me. But more than that, even if that would have happened, like, I can appreciate authors taking like a different point of view, a different ending than what you're expecting. I can appreciate all that. But what I don't appreciate is the speed in which it was done. It felt like it just skipped ahead. I feel like the first 2/3 of the book were, descriptive and, paced very well, and just, they were so magical. But that last 100 pages was just like, oh, and this is what happens. And you're like, but what about this? And what about taking a little bit more time with that? And I feel like the build up in Cinderella is her going to the ball. And in this one, there's like this inventor's exposition where she wants to show something like an invention so she can be sponsored, so she can make money and get away from her stepmother and stepsisters, which I felt like that was the build up. But then, boom, it's the exposition, boom, it's the royal ball, and the ball's over, and here's the end. And it did have an epilogue, which I appreciated that they included, but I mean, I was just so turned off by the ending that I was just kind of like, you know that feeling? The one that you're just like, yeah, that's how I was kind of feeling. But overall, again, I rated this on Goodreads 4 stars, but the true rating is between 3.5 to 4 stars because the ending was really what spoiled it for me. Like, it would have been a 5-star book. It would have been 5 stars. So maybe some things in the final copy were changed around or added to that could have made it a little bit better. But yeah, that is my review of Mechanica by Betsy Cornwell, and I really appreciate the publishing company and authors sending this to me for review. Thank you so much, and that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to subscribe for more reviews like this, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!